On June 12, 2026, the new film by Steven Spielberg was released. The Day of Truth with the slogan, "We deserve to know," or "What makes everything in me tremble the most," is the slogan this summer. The truth belongs to 8 billion people. Welcome, dear people, to a very special episode that I have been preparing for a long time. And the truth is, I delayed it because I had too many limiting beliefs and convictions about how it should be done. Until I just said, go in, get into the studio and start, because everything depends on you. I love these types of episodes where I can have a direct conversation with all of you. It really means a lot to me. I don't take these moments for granted in any way. I want to thank each and every one of you who has followed the channel and my journey so far over these 11 years, and also those who are just now discovering me. Hello, I'm Stoyan Valkov, better known as Choco. Welcome to my space. It's a pleasure for me. This is Steven Spielberg's first film with alien UFO themes since 2005 and his War of the Worlds, more than 20 years after Close Encounters of the Third Kind from 1977 and E.T., or The Extraterrestrial from 1982. He literally defines how it should look in all of pop culture. And in our minds, aliens and their presence on the big screen, in our minds and in our imagination. And now he's coming back with something that really shakes things up. This time, not just with some fantastic elements, but with a whole hybrid program, with a full disclosure to the world, with everything that we, the fans of otherworldly realms and seemingly impossible things, are eagerly waiting for. Why? This is critically important to me because this year, on February 19th, Donald Trump officially ordered the Pentagon to release a huge portion of the UFO or unidentified aerial phenomena documents. And on May 8th, the Pentagon published declassified videos, photos, reports, free and public for everyone. And they can be seen on the government website. There are already a huge number of documents with recorded objects, and now the government is no longer talking about whether they exist or not. Instead, they're basically saying, here they are. But we don't know what this is. We can't handle it because these aren't enemy drones from other countries. This is something we can't even describe with our own physics. These are over 160 files that each of you can see, some of which date back more than 80 years. Everything starts, in the world of UFOs, and it's good to mention it in a few sentences. This is 1947, the famous Roswell incident, the crashed saucer, which later turns out not to be just one crashed saucer, and several alien bodies, which were taken for autopsy, and later it was revealed that they managed to take them. The military to perform an autopsy, to read the DNA, to take remains from the ship that crashed back then, which turned out to be very small. A very small saucer, not one of those big ones that everyone imagines as the mothership of the Empire, let's say of Darth Vader, but something much smaller, like a reconnaissance type, or just, yes, reconnaissance. Then, in one day, the military regrouped because of what happened, and they couldn't explain it. They start publishing everywhere in the newspapers that it was a weather balloon. And nothing strange, no anomaly, everything is within the norms, under the control of the military. That's where a lot of questions start. But back then, since the technology wasn't as advanced as it is now, they managed to cover up the case very quickly. And so for a while, things stayed quiet until new cases started appearing again. This video is in an open format and I'm just spontaneously sharing what I think, because even from the very title, what is happening with all these contacts and with these government revelations, with these documents? Well, all of this is part of a very deep program and a very profound awakening process. You know that in my book we touch on reality, and before that, at our meetings, which we constantly hold in Bulgaria and abroad and everywhere. In general, I always try to give a much more global perspective from my point of view. Of course, in no way do I belittle or impose what I think, but that's why this is my channel and I have the right to tell you. Every idea, every concept that is presented to you in some way as the truth, as the way, don't forget that it is limited. any other idea that, for example, might happen, or something that's strange, that's new, that seems like this is it, we've hit the jackpot and that's it. Everything will fall into place from here. It's also just a concept, an idea, and it's something external. It's good to remind ourselves of this more often, because now I'll give you a few perspectives. One perspective. The other day, I had the chance to have coffee with someone, and in front of the mall where the cafe is, on the left, that's exactly what we were talking about, that they had just put up the new poster for Spielberg's movie, The Day of Truth. And my point of view is the following. It's amazing and really a big success. I see this as a great achievement. Everyone is just drinking their coffee as usual, life goes on. And at the same time, on the left, there's a giant poster that says, "We deserve to know," or "This summer, 8 billion people deserve the truth." Which to me is something huge. Because we, as always, split everyone into two polarities, two camps, just like the universe. The positive immediately, some kind of emotion, some kind of impulse, and the negative, oh, just wait and see, it's another disappointment. This is part of the plan. It's a very well thought out plan and project for controlling our consciousness and our souls. Just wait and see what happens, and the stance of the person I spoke with, whom you can watch in this video. But I'm using it as an example because, you know, I'm honest and I always use some story that has happened to me. His position was the following. He is open to all these things, that they go deep for a long time. He is aware that we are energy and that we create our own world with our thoughts. However, when it comes to mentioning extraterrestrials, those people who believe in that prefer to join the camp. This genetic engineering of humanity, which, let's say, hypothetically comes from the Anunnaki. And this type of civilization and this type of race, more than 350,000 years ago, at least according to the records and interpretations of Zecharia Sitchin on the Sumerian tablets, those who come from the sky or came from the heavens. Looking at it this way, the point of view is the following. We are just another genetic experiment. We are just another experiment, not extraterrestrial. The previous ones have failed, obviously, and there's no guarantee that we won't fail as well. And in any case, we have no freedom in this choice. That we are here at exactly this time, that we are placed right here, and we hardly have any choice about what to do. And the fact that we are here on Earth at all, which I simply do not agree with. And I said that. For me, this awareness, which comes from the ancient sages, which is the wisdom of Todd, the wisdom of ancient Egypt, the wisdom of the East, is as follows in a very broad summary. Ultimately, everything we see outside in reality, in our parallel reality, in our world of illusions of Maya, it is an illusion. It is something external. Which means that if we find its entry, its essence, its foundation, it is neutral, it must be neutral. Because the universe itself, the cosmos itself, existence itself, our very biology, all of this intelligence, it starts from a point of neutrality. It doesn't start from plus, nor does it start from minus. It starts from zero. And as a result of that, now we know. And scientists are discovering that everything within us contains sacred geometry and fractals, a fractal structure that confirms the Hermetic principle. Every single part contains the whole, and the whole is contained in every single part. This means that somewhere out there in the foundation of every single element, there is this neutrality, this base that is neutral, that is infinite, that simply is as it is. And if we reach this foundation, then we can put our own meaning inside, put our own reaction, put our own choice about what this means to us. And actually in the trailer, Steven Spielberg asks this question: how will this revelation change us? How from tomorrow? And if we imagine that even tomorrow we're not talking about America, there are many cases. Let's get out of this idea that it's always in the States, around the White House, and all the ships land there. That's not the case at all. Internationally, you can find an extremely large number of cases of strange objects that have been found and recorded in. In the public space, there are people who share vulnerable stories of abductions and their memories of what happened. For example, the most common thing is that they don't remember how they were abducted by beings that we see in Spielberg's movie. The so-called greys lying on a bed, kind of like those stretched ceilings where everything is one color and glowing, in white. On some kind of examination table, they do something to them, their genetics, they study them, and then this thing happens. Some even remember how their memories are erased. There are many similarities in these stories, not just American ones. You can see them all over the world to see that this thing happens constantly. Separately, there is already an app called Enigma, which we shared in the episode with Adelina Dimitrova. This Enigma app shows things in real time. A very, very, very large part of this type of observations and this type of reports are objects that have been recorded by people themselves. It's a bit like a social network. People themselves upload anomalies and strange objects from all over the world. The whole globe is there, and you can see such objects not only in America, so we can move away from those things that always lead back to America or Russia. We keep going into the same corridors and we don't want to hear a different angle or a different point of view. Saying that, going back to the story with the coffee, then I told him this. It's like everything else in my opinion. You're right, I understand your point of view. It's not a coincidence at all that Spielberg's movie comes out exactly when those classified documents from Donald Trump and the government were released at that exact time. And exactly this movie. It's absurd, isn't it? It's not a coincidence at all, but I can speak from my own point of view to share my opinion with you that it's not a coincidence. It's not a coincidence that on a local level, on planet Earth, that is. The governments, ancient societies, that control things from behind the scenes, not the ones we see as the public faces of leading countries. That's a real thing. This has been clear for a long time, but from an even more global perspective, it seems that this is necessary for humanity. And as I told him, this movie is like a lighter. We can choose with this lighter to set someone's house on fire, literally, by pouring a little gasoline and watching it burn. Or we can go, if we're in the forest, and in this way light a fire to spend the night warm and have shelter. And that's our choice. We choose how to react to, at first glance, the same events. We choose how to use things that are already fixed. And for me, this is a tool. For me, this is a revelation, this disclosure, as it's called in English. This is a huge challenge for all of us, because just imagine how much it will shake us to the core. Here, I'll make a side note before I continue, because I've made myself a sort of plan, but I'm sorry, I'm just not good at sticking to this kind of framework. It never works for me. What I've written down doesn't matter at all. I'll make a side note. What will happen to spirituality if tomorrow it's announced everywhere that the question is no longer whether, but what do we do now? What will happen to those people who for 20 years, for 30 years have been saying there are aliens, these are all of them, these are the known races, Andromedans, Syrians, Greys, Reptilians, Mantids, or other beings? Will the so-called spiritual ego form? Once again, I told you, didn't I? I told you, didn't I? I told you, didn't I? Because there's no point in lying to ourselves. When a person starts on this path of awakening, of waking up in some way, starts to read, wants to expand their consciousness, to broaden their worldview, you always go through this phase of revolution. You always go through this phase of I. Did I tell you, look at you now, you're sleeping sheep, open your eyes. And even though it's nice sometimes to tickle each other's brains like this, overall my opinion is that this is just an initial process and the next process is coming. Okay, everyone has their own truth, everyone has their own path, everyone has their own precise clock and precise stopwatch and precise compass with how things should happen for him, how things should fall into place in his parallel reality. Because that's what he has chosen. He has chosen this experience. He has chosen a longer, more stretched out time and continues to choose a longer, more stretched out time and space in which to give himself the opportunity to orient himself in this world. Some have received it more dynamically, more condensed, like me in a few years, more intensely, like Valia, like many of you. Others receive it from 45 or 50 onwards, because I see that the people who watch me and watch the Reality Explorer are over 45 years old. At 50, they've just stepped into these shoes. They've just started to see the world in that different way later, which has always existed. It's just that we haven't expanded our consciousness until that moment to allow it to be a spectrum in our horizon. And here, this is what will happen to all those people who say, "Didn't I tell you so?" Because I have also done such shows. And that's dangerous. It's more of a warning. It's good to keep it in mind. When this disclosure happens, these are the first steps toward announcing this information. In a moment, you will see that it is known to humanity, both to people who have read and to those who have been in these circles for many years. The point isn't to compare who has read more, their origins, knowledge, or when their awakening or third eye opening happened. Because these are the things I've been seeing lately in the public space. My request is to be a little more tolerant, to be a little more respectful, to be a little less hateful, even in spiritual circles. Because when we declare ourselves spiritual or very knowledgeable, we still apply the same functions and qualities we have when we're at Lidl or Billa or in front of Easy Ezipaycast. And it turns into a kind of paradoxical mess. This is what one of our guests explained, whom you'll see in a week or two. For example, in the Arab world, they pray, perform very specific prayers on the carpet, almost lying on their knees, and the moment the prayer ends, they walk out the door and start arguing, start shouting. As if just a moment ago they weren't in that process of solitude, of connection, and so on. In other words, unless we change what happens after we are given some kind of information, we will keep seeing nothing. We will keep doing the same thing. It's like the example of being put in the nicest car and being driven in a Rolls Royce, or being put in first class on a plane. If you are tense, if you are worried, if you want to direct your anxiety toward others, if you are a narcissist, if you want to spread your anxiety all the time, this will happen in those places too. Exactly because the external, what manifests in the material, what we perceive, is already the result of what we have projected inside. From the heart, from our thoughts, from our impulses, from our desires, from our foundation, from what lies beyond our familiar biology, from what is our intelligence, from what is strength. And this is simply a result, so it's the same. Imagine it on a macro level and on a micro level and on a micro level and on a macro level. And when it comes to what this remote is, or how will coffee affect me, or how will the donor affect me, or how will the creatine dose affect me, how will it affect me? A huge movie that will definitely reach almost the entire planet. Again, we choose through our perception, our point of view, and the attention we invest in a given thing. The event itself is neutral, and here I come to a third point that I wrote down: conspiracy theorists, or the so-called general pattern among conspiracy theorists. Our conspiracy theorists love this type of theory. Before, it wasn't about reptiles. Before that, it wasn't about the royal family. I've also made that kind of videos because things get intertwined. But if you remember the previous solo episode I did, you can see it somewhere here or below in the description. I think it was called The Paradox of 2026. There I talked about the egregore. Everything has its own egregore and its own sphere of specifically gathered thoughts and ideas, impulses, energy, and vibration, the egregore of conspiracies. When you hear it this way, it's also limited because it never gets out of this phase of maybe. There's never any verification in it. There's always a hypothesis. There's always negativity in it. Because conspiracies are mostly about negative influence, and they're about control, and they're directly connected to manipulation and global manipulation. And the idea that in the end you'll expose the conspiracy and reveal it, so what? What does that give you? Does it give you a complete perspective? That is, you can't go and check this thing yourself. People want to go and check it. We want to get in touch with the truth, as we say. We want to see it for ourselves. Does it work? No? Listen to me, listen to the greatest sages and enlightened people of all time. But the ways to verify all this, or any idea or information from a global point of view, there is only one: to close our eyes and connect with many points. Connect with what resonates for you and works for you, but close your eyes and connect with yourself, ask a question, and you will be given images and pictures. Now, the Schumann resonance is high enough, so to speak, the most ordinary thing. A person who until now has only followed certain breathing patterns in meditation or has done those 30-day challenges on YouTube. He can also close his eyes, concentrate, and see within himself what the answer is to questions like, for example, what is the role of the reptilians in human civilization or the royal family, and to what extent his bloodline is connected with that of the draconians? Or where are the aliens now? What is this hybrid program? Or those who already live among us? These are things that Bashar has been talking about for more than 10 years. That is, he shared it a long time ago. About the year 2026, about the year 2025, about the window that is, let's say, from 2024, from 2025 to 2030, depending on the choices of humanity and so on. But the conspiratorial mood, this whole topic, even if some kind of evidence comes, because everything has a plus and a minus, that's it. A few of these conspiracies have been true, of course, otherwise there wouldn't be any doubt at all. When that evidence comes, often instead of relief, a new fear comes for most people. See, this thing has been confirmed, now they'll do something new, now they'll get us through the back door. This is an interesting point to reflect on. In no way is this a criticism of the people who fall into this group. It's just an observation that even when the information you desire so strongly, I mean, that's your excitement, that's your thrill, even when the desired information comes, if our beliefs are still built on fear, on control, on what will happen to me, if the new information just fits into the same framework and the same vibration, and it keeps playing the same game, nothing changes internally. And that's a bridge to the next point. Because what we're going to talk about from here on is the opposite perspective, how to get out of these limitations. At least in my opinion, this is in no way obligatory. But I'm telling you my opinion because I'm simply observing what's happening in the States and generally on social networks related to this disclosure about the start of this contact. All of us as people, when we were little and watched such movies, secretly hoped, wow, that would be amazing, wow. I've given you the examples with Bashar when he explains that they did an experiment with their ship to gather a group of their most devoted followers to tell them, okay, we'll bring the ship much lower so you can see it. Let's see, since you're ready, okay, let's go. The moment they even start to lower the ship. The vibration is so strong, the resonance is so intense that people start screaming in panic and leave, and there is absolutely no interaction at all. My request is, some always say they change every year, the 26th, the 27th, the 28th, the 29th, others say this too. These aliens, now we'll get into this thing as well. I acknowledge that they exist, but they are also part of this control, of this manipulation. Which is a choice, that's a choice. Because if you understand the fundamental principles of the universe, there's no way something won't happen. You can't have equal numbers of pluses and minuses. It's impossible for everything to be negative. In a universe where we constantly observe new galaxies, new solar systems, new constellations, new stars forming all the time, there's no way everything there can be negative. And if there is intelligent life, for it to exist just to control us. So that's actually a very egocentric and prideful point of view, that in the end, here on Earth, we're always the ones who pay. To put it bluntly, like the curious, inspired thought that what's out there is much more intelligent, much more advanced, with far more developed technology, and if they wanted to destroy us or instill fear in us in this way. Like in those movies from, 15 or 20 years ago, not most of Spielberg's, but the ones that are super negative. Here they come to conquer us, to destroy us. Judgment Day is coming. Guys, do you really think that's not possible for them if they have hyperspace technology, like we talked about in the episode about the documentary The Age of Disclosure, when people, well-known researchers like How Puthoff, were commenting that they have hyperspace technology? They can go through water, through shadows, up, down, with the so-called warp bubble, or a bubble that bends space and time. Do you think that if you have such technology and you want to do something to someone, you could do it very quickly, right? Well, the answer for me here is that these beings, they are much more advanced. And when you are advanced technologically in this way, you are advanced internally as well. You know what empathy means. Not all of them, okay, but these ones in particular, and they understand very well that in the universe, everything is one. They understand very well, they really do, that each one is a reflection of everyone else. That is, in practice, they would be destroying themselves, another version of themselves, another part of themselves. And that's why I think that on a galactic scale, there is a much different kind of harmony. And even those who are, let's say, of a negative nature as well, they also explore their mission and know these rules. So, for the conspirators and what is going to appear, first of all, this is really just the beginning. Imagine all the people who have hesitated so far, who are still hesitating, those who are not into these things at all, who will say, what kind of nonsense is this? This is for them, for all of you who are more. At the moment, we describe ourselves as more awake, as more aware, as those who have seen beyond the news. Male earlier. This is a lesson in pride. This is a lesson in patience. This is a lesson in tolerance. This is a lesson in compassion. This is a lesson in AM. How ready are we to put our arm around someone and wait, to say, oh, hey, and be ready to guide this person as if they were a little child. And you've watched the movie Aladdin or The Lion King 50 times, and now on the 51st time you watch it for the first time with the same amount of excitement, so that the child can feel as energized as possible, as if you are there with them, in their boat, supporting them the whole time. Well, how are you sure that they aren't doing both, and that this is directed at that part of us? For those who understand all this and have heard about the abductions, about these kinds of experiments, I can say that I am very happy that these things are happening in my reality, because looking at it this way, I am grateful that after all, everywhere, on all banks, on all advertisements, on all companies and firms, whether they are sports related or not, that have nothing to do with this. At one point, notice everywhere a universal theme starts to appear. More and more of these kinds of backgrounds, fonts, advertisements, and banners start to be used. With aliens, including for people, for companies related to the internet, optics, cables, they start putting aliens, they start putting them. This is interference in culture, this is interference in the collective consciousness, so that little by little we start getting used to this thing. It will go through movies, it will go through theaters, it will go through performances, it will go through events, it will go through TV series, it will go through lectures, it will go through radio, it will go through cars, it will go through artificial intelligences. And at some point when we are truly ready, it will go through a huge test. When, for example, an object appears like in the movie Arrival, you remember those huge ships standing vertically, just standing there, and they've been there for 50, 60, 70 days. And it's so big that there's no way around it. Just imagine, even with just one landing and positioning, the appearance of such an object, even if it hasn't landed, just levitating. What will happen to the global consciousness? What will happen to Bulgaria here? The film raises very good questions, which is wonderful. I'm very happy that it asks these questions. What will happen to spirituality? What will happen to faith? What will happen to the church as an institution? What will happen to Islam? And again, let's not be, I used to be like that, very, let's call it super, let's say hyper, let's call it hyper optimistic. something like that happens and that's it, it's over, that's it will totally destroy them. No, everything in the universe is polar. We exist thanks to contrast, and thanks to this contrast we can sift out what it is that we prefer for our world, the one we are building, and our environment. And again, even then, in the face of the obvious, just like for a few of us now, this is a moment of the obvious, right? What was it in the world of UFOs? It's just an ordinary Tuesday, get used to it. But even then, things will be divided again. There will be camps again, and again they will say, look, these are demons right before their eyes, and they will deny it. Simply because that's what we know, simply because the world we are used to is shaped by our beliefs. At one point, it just only seems stable and as if it is unchangeable, but everything changes in the universe. Except for the first 4 laws, you exist and that is unchangeable. Whatever you emit, you will receive back in return. The whole is mind, the world is mental, and everything always happens. In the simultaneity of here and now, everything is only now, and we stretch time and space. Everything else is constantly changing. Mix, frame with frame, picture with picture, fingerprint with fingerprint, day with day, night with night. There is no same one. That's how it is with other things as well. For those of you who are interested in the Galactic Federation of Light, I want to say a few things. In my book, the last chapter is dedicated to contact and channeling, but it's also a very interesting study about what happened in the recent past. For prominent figures like Jane Roberts, Esther Hicks, and Edgar Cayce, who have dedicated their lives to this new yet old perspective, according to which I'm telling you, the contact has never stopped. And if we look at life, the universe, everything that happens in cycles like fashion, for example, right now in Bulgaria, wide-legged pants and huge shoes are back in fashion, things are starting to come back. For example, from the 80s, the headbands, those wide reddish-brown ones that aren't pure black hats, and in this way, chains. Everything goes in circles, and it goes in circles because everything, the whole is mind, the world is mental. Everything already exists as an informational field in the source. Everything exists, but it doesn't exist exactly as experienced and chosen by us. Now, the source doesn't know, or the creation doesn't know what exactly you will do in this moment with the information, because it is still limited bits. Information when it passes exactly through you. Now, otherwise, the information itself exists. Starting from this point of view, we begin to explain to ourselves the different cycles in the universe, the different cycles of the moon, the different cycles of the solar system, of the galaxy, and accordingly of the extraterrestrial worlds. The contact has not stopped, it just hasn't been officially announced because that is its purpose. The idea here is to pursue a different kind of development, so that we don't make the same mistakes that have happened before, the ones we know from the past. Atlantis, which we know about. And the reason for the flood to come and for the floods to come, because it wasn't just one in human history that destroyed entire civilizations. To restart civilization, exactly that. Here's an interesting fact. In the 1930s, the French anthropological team Griel and Dieter Len documented that the well-known Dogon tribe from Mali possessed extremely accurate knowledge about Sirius. Well, this is a star with a companion, invisible to the naked eye, you can't see it. Officially, it was observed for the first time in 1862. The Dogon spoke about it as if they were observing it directly, as if they knew it. They described its orbit, density, and even the mass ratio compared to our Sun. Robert Temple, a member of the Royal Astronomical Society, wrote an entire book called The Sirius Mystery in 1776 and came to a conclusion that this knowledge must come from somewhere else, outside of our own science, because they knew it. Critics, for example, like Carl Sagan, have another explanation, that the knowledge probably comes from contact with Western astronomers. In the 1930s, at a time when the discovery of Sirius B was a very hotly discussed topic in science. And this is a kind of, he says, transfer of knowledge, not contact with extraterrestrials. What's interesting is what I mentioned earlier. In the Sumerian texts, translated by Zakaria Sitchin, there is talk about these beings called the Anunnaki, literally those Anunnaki who came from the sky. A story that he derives is that about 300 to 450,000 years ago, these beings genetically modified an early species of Homo erectus or Homo habilis. by mixing their DNA with it to create a workforce for extracting resources as servants. Interestingly, the contactee material, what Bashar has been saying for so many years, he tells almost an identical chronology about this genetic intervention. This happened in a very similar region and period in the area of the Middle East and Africa near Egypt. The idea of the Galactic Federation of Light, that's a separate topic we can touch on. I'm very happy that the late Professor Stamen Stamanov, he talked about it. He presented a picture that shares a union of different civilizations, different consciousnesses, who do not act as conquerors, but rather as allies, as observers. And they can't just land and save us, as it has been presented to all of us, because that would interrupt our own development, which in itself is a very good argument for free will. In fact, this contact that is being described is not an invasion, it's not an incursion, it's not an attack, but rather a long-term, quiet presence with very subtle revelations. Based on fractals and the idea that everything has a larger version and a miniature version of itself, there should be a government just like we have on Earth, but on a more galactic scale, on a more galactic level, that takes care of things we can't even imagine. And still, even if we understand, so what? What will happen if we learn about it now, if we start shaking just from watching a trailer for a movie about these kinds of things? How would we handle actually understanding it? Information, for example, about beings who calculate and consider different parallel lines, collective masses, collective entities, and so on. These are things that we really can't accept at all from our human point of view, that we can't even process. But that shouldn't exclude them from the equation in any way. An open mind gives new opportunities. A closed mind says, dude, yeah, that's nonsense. I'm going to have a beer. And in that case, you just say, yeah, I hope you got the good stuff because Radler it's worth living for something better. The next point of view is channeling, in the way I'm speaking to the camera right now, without any script. In the same way that an artist paints his next masterpiece. In the same way, when a beautiful couple steps onto the stage and dances the tango, that's channeling, that's that connection. And if we know that we are informational clouds of information, which is a fact, then everything is channeling, everything is transmission, everything is receiving and transmitting. And here's a very interesting side note to think about. What does the word transmission mean in Bulgarian right now? See, I say I'm filming a broadcast. What are you doing? I'm filming a broadcast. I'm making a broadcast on the internet or on TV. What does broadcast mean? Well, broadcast, it's a transmission of information. Right now, this passes through the frequencies of the microphone. First, it comes out of my vocal cords as a vibration, goes through the frequencies of the microphone, and then passes through the camera. The visual part, the whole thing right now is going through another program. It's passing through the cloud servers of YouTube. YouTube goes through your devices, your fiber optic connection, and your internet that you subscribe to, also digitally. And it reaches your prism and your eyes, your consciousness, again as an information cloud. And what would make it different is your perception of what you see. And be sure of one thing. What I am saying right now, what you see or hear is fundamentally different for you. Because even if you hear a rejection, even if you hear a word and say, this can't be different, this is separate, but the connections you will make, like different trains or different real puzzles in the labyrinth of your consciousness, are fundamentally different from mine. They are fundamentally different from those of your best friend or a family friend. They are fundamentally different. You connect them with other patterns of memories, with other patterns of experience, with other associations you have for the words you know. And so if you go on endlessly, that's how you form your entire world. So that's monetization. It's very interesting to preserve this corridor of attention and keep that in mind. And for those who know this and decide to use it for more negative purposes, they are the manipulators. However, as I always repeat and as I wrote in the book, When we already have access to so much information, naturally we can say there are discrepancies in the information, right? It's already mixed up and you don't know what's what. But when we have so much information and we know that our filter, the sieve we use is our heart, there's no way they can manipulate you there. Then we can already choose to play freely. We can choose how to react and choose when we feel comfortable talking about the things that have happened to us. Some of you already know, but for first-time viewers, this may be surprising, so I'm sharing it. That I have had such channeling experiences. They are more conscious channeling, let's call it that, based on what I just said to the camera. But at the core, it's the same. And I have sought such contact, and each of us can receive such messages. The last time it happened to me, I'm not someone who does it regularly. It's just because right now I have other interests and I have that right. I realize that this too is freedom and free will. Following the greatest excitements in life. Like an exploration, like a life task, my current mission, like thrills, I don't know. This Stoyan now doesn't know them. That doesn't mean I can't do it at certain times. And when I do it, for example, the last time was at the grave of Venerable Stoyna. I allowed myself to feel that connection and I received a message from her. She is there for those of us who are ready to, yes, to hear what she has to say. Because in her case, it's not very easy. I can share it with you sometime if you're interested. This type of channeling, this state, they define us as people when we allow ourselves these connections. Whether it's close contact, whether it's someone who has passed away and we love very much, or whether it's someone we just know will influence us, when we feel that connection, these are real interactions. If you don't believe or it feels strange, what can I do? You understand it when you feel that thrill, when you even hear the tone of voice and the way this woman spoke, because she didn't speak the way we speak right now. Then you say to yourself, wow. In the same way, things happen in the information field with different races. There are people, countless throughout history and even now, who receive messages, who record these messages, who speak in an incomprehensible language just like in the movie. All of this that you see is absolutely real. And there's a very interesting fact. After the screening of E.T. at the White House in 1982, President Reagan spoke to Steven Spielberg. He says to him, the president says to him, do you know how few people in this room know that this is true? Everything happening so simultaneously is not a coincidence. Everything is starting to happen much more dynamically, much faster, and you play a major role in that. This means that once you see it, it is happening in your world. This means that we are truly moving toward a discovery and into a wonderful perspective. For years, I can't even say how many, we will have the opportunity to observe such objects with the naked eye right in front of us. Channeling is one way to create what I'd call an inner connection. It won't be so strongly expressed on the outside. But for those who want to receive information, for those who want to feel this connection, this knowledge, because it is very strong, very intense, let me say it at the beginning, because the vibration is really very, very broad, very wide, very high. That doesn't mean you have a low one or are worse. My request is, and this is part of this type of solo shows, this is again our acceptance of this kind of point of view. No, nobody said that you are lower, nobody said that, or maybe someone told you and you believe it. This is also part of the program. No, that's just a fact. We are currently vibrating at a certain set of frequencies and vibrations. That which is more expansive, like love, like gratitude, like inspiration, like those moments of magic. When Leo Messi takes a free kick in the 90th minute and his team is losing 1-0, those moments of connection, which he also talks about in the book, those are the moments of expansion and access to much broader information to a much wider range. And each one of us can reach it. Each one of us touches it simply by being on Earth. A few sentences more if tomorrow the official final confirmation comes everywhere. What happens to the entire spiritual community, to the people who, as we said, have been talking for decades about higher beings, expanded consciousness and contact? Well, an interesting paradox happens. The confirmation will both validate and render meaningless at the same time. Because the people who were called crazy, mentally ill, or disturbed, those who were sent to the mental clinic, turn out to have awakened earlier. However, it becomes meaningless to a greater extent because spirituality in the form we know it loses its role as the sole conduit of this information. It will become official news, that is, in the case of an open contact. It won't be just the people who talk about such topics sharing this information. We will be able to learn directly from these beings, which puts things in a completely different perspective. So what do we, the researchers of reality, the explorers, those who ask questions, do then? Do we continue to search in the same way, beyond the visible, or do we stop because it has been officially confirmed? I would say that this should simply be a huge motivation for us to ask even more questions. But not just to wonder or play around, but to gain a deeper understanding of what we are really made of this intelligence that flows through our veins. For me to sum up, everything that's happening and about to happen is not a test set by someone who is once again controlling us. This is a test that humanity itself, all of us, are setting for ourselves, how we will once again respond to the unknown. With fear, with control, with despair, with anxiety, or with joy, with maturity, with curiosity, with openness. And this is a question that goes beyond the form of any kind of conspiracies, red headlines, screaming news, and so on, which we will witness. We can't do without them either. But my request to all of you who follow the channel and the show, everything that all these guests are teaching, and what I am trying to convey to you with my own path. Breathe calmly, and this will pass. And we will have the opportunity to expand again, new opportunities will come. I don't see much point in proving ourselves to someone who is a bit more limited than us. Did I tell you? Did you see, but you didn't listen to me? What's the point of wasting our precious time here on Earth, wasting it trying to prove something to someone? What kind of life is that? I don't see its great meaning. I don't really see what meaning it would gain or give, although there are such manifestations. My request is for us to be patient, to be even more aware, and to share this information, but to know why we're sharing it, to share it consciously. Because several times we have the tendency and the habit to dive in. Oh, yes, let's experience it. It's cool. It's cool that it's happening right now. It's really exciting. There's no point in denying it. This is unique for those who've been waiting for this. But at the same time, we need to stay connected, to know that this thing is not above us, that all of us are the source, all of us are the whole universe of possibilities. Tomorrow, something else from outside will be presented to us. But we should know exactly how we want to use it and not surrender to it completely, because then we truly include everything, and then anything can happen. Awareness doesn't mean constantly waiting for the next threat and being ready. It means being as much yourself as possible, being alert to your choices and your reactions at every moment. Not only when big news appears, not only when something huge happens. You know you're not yourself. You know you're not just here in this time and space. You know you're not just here with these friends you have. You know that the cards you have right now, at this moment, are not just random cards. There's some lesson that comes out of this whole thing. What will happen if tomorrow aliens land openly and declare, here we are, or this is the first phase? Of course we will change, but are we ready for such contact? Are we ready for such a change? Are we ready to unite and leave behind wars and political nonsense? In the name of something much greater and much more universal, which will require us to see ourselves as earthlings, not as people from Plovdiv, Sofia, Varna, Bulgarians, Croats, or Macedonians. I think we need to work more towards these kinds of connections, and that will naturally broaden our horizons. Naturally, we'll be able to accept many different concepts more openly. And for those who are ready for these messages, for these contacts, they will reach them and will be the different leaders and guides of humanity towards a much happier, much freer, much more open and liberated from fears, illusions, manipulations, and control. A world chosen by each one of you. It was a great pleasure for me. Thank you. An hour passed unnoticed, and why didn't I do it earlier? Sometimes we set aside what excites us most and tell ourselves to wait. Wait, just let me do this. Wait, just let me tidy up. Wait, just let me take care of these things. Wait, just let me pay this bill. Wait, just let me go see who's calling me. Wait, just let me go downstairs. Wait, just let me go there, and then I'll write it. And in the end, 3 months have passed. Whatever you wonder about or are most passionate and excited about, do it now. I challenge you, we challenge you, do it for yourself, do it for those around you, do it for everyone, because at our core, we are all one. I bow to you and thank you from the heart, dear people. We're making a big update to our website. Follow my channel if you haven't subscribed. It really means a lot, a lot, a lot. You can check out our updated website, which is about to launch in our ABG, our membership, my book, Touching Reality. Get your copy. We also ship internationally. Many people have already received it, and I am very grateful to you for that. Since September, I've been doing everything possible to get the book into bookstores, bookshops, gas stations, malls, big stores, so you can see it and have access to it. We are also planning to organize events abroad in Bulgaria and in general, AM. We're also taking it easy, to be honest, because there's no need to rush, even though a lot of things are happening quickly. Now is the time when we shouldn't hurry, so that we don't make wrong decisions, so that we are conscious and alert in what we do, and so that sometimes we let things happen because they always do. Thank you to each and every one of you for taking your time, for your attention, for following us and for supporting me. In everything that started as an endeavor, in everything I want to realize every time, I try to be consistent, but that's just the kind of person I am. I always like there to be some new twist, for things to be different, and that makes me feel alive. If you're like that too, here's a reminder that this isn't something negative. On the contrary, it's a plus. And you can build an entire career and a whole life out of this. And that's okay. You can live like this, you can be present like this, you can survive like this, you can feel happy. This way you can get up in the morning with a big reason for it, and you can make a lot of other people happy because of it. And at the same time, you can appreciate yourself, your time, your life, and your reality. Thank you from the bottom of my heart until the next moment. Based on what you watch every day, YouTube calculates with its algorithm, and here is this video right here. It's different for everyone. Which one is most suitable for you at this moment according to your struggles? Watch it.